So friends, for our first plenary talk, we have with us Dr. Rajendrasinh Jadeja. Sir is the former director of prestigious H.M. Patel Institute of English Training and Research located at Vallabh Vidyanagar, Anand, Gujarat, India. He is the teacher of teachers. He has trained almost all the English teachers who have been working in different schools and colleges of Gujarat. He has played a pivotal role of editing the English language textbooks of Gujarat Board and the NCERT, New Delhi. Under his able leadership, several glorious ELT conferences have taken place in Vallabh Vidyanagar and in many states of our nation. Certainly, currently, Sir is heading the H.M. Patel Career Development Center at Vallabh Vidyanagar, India. Today, Sir is going to talk about opening up ELT. I invite Dr. Rajendrasinh Jadeja to deliver his talk. Dr. Rajendrasinh Jadeja.
Hello, good morning, everybody. In this difficult time of Corona, people are suffering from a lot of anxiety. And even in these times of anxiety, some enthusiastic and courageous people like Tarun and other members of his team, they have taken this initiative, and let me at the outset congratulate the team for being able to provide leadership and fighting anxiety, not only in words, but in deeds. I would like to start with the first um, presentation slide, where the next slide, please. Yes, where we are looking at ELT as an academic discipline which has had many avatars, because it is called by different names in different places, and at different times it has adopted different names. Like when it was called TEFL or TESOL, it was simply teaching of English as a foreign language or teaching of English as a second language. And in many of the American universities, right from the beginning, it has been called TESOL, which is teaching of English to speakers of other languages. I think we are talking about ELT mainly in the British tradition. And when we talk about ELT, it is teacher training or teacher education perspective that dominates the discussion. But broadly speaking, it is not only teacher training or teacher education that is our concern. It includes teaching and learning and even assessment. Next, please. Okay, so we are faced with a kind of dilemma everywhere, because education by definition is constantly changing. It is constantly developing. Similarly, the discipline of ELT has also been constantly changing and constantly developing. So we do not just talk about different names for the discipline, but different avatars. And when we say a different avatar, we mean that all the concepts are different and its external form and internal content also keeps changing. However, it is a fact that most teachers try to cling to one best method which they have come to realize works in their classroom situation. And therefore, they are they become at some point anti-change, and they are not worried about developing themselves or developing the discipline. They continue to do what they have been doing. Therefore, I am saying that they try to cling to the best method, or they try to cling to the best book, the best grammar that they have found very effective, very useful, quite comprehensive in their view, or the best textbook. Of course, in most of the Indian states, the textbook is prescribed and the decisions are centralized. So in that sense, there is just one textbook, not the best textbook. But in the international context, the teachers may be able to choose their textbook or the course book. And even when they have that choice available, they would like to cling to the best textbook or the best book of grammar. Partly this is because the material, the teaching material, is at the tip of the teacher's tongue. And it is this model which becomes anti-change or anti-development. What I am trying to do in this presentation is pleading for opening up ELT so that we become pro-change and pro-development. Next, please. What I have said about teacher remains true about teacher training, in the sense, in the teacher education programs also, the teacher educator, if she is not ready to change, may keep advocating one best method or a set of good books, and it goes on and on for a decade or 2 decades. The teacher educator continues to advocate the same approach, the same textbooks. What I'm talking about is CPD, or continuing professional development. I'm sure during the inaugural session, you noticed that the experts were all concerned about continuing professional development. It is basically an approach to one's own development, so that we are not talking about one model method or one model book. We are talking about an evolving model, so that the teacher is making every effort to evolve in the process of teaching. It is a matter of lifetime mastery versus lifelong learning. When I was a student, my teachers, my professors were seen as lifetime masters. And quite often, when they taught Shakespeare, they did not carry the book in their classrooms because they knew the whole text by heart. And when they were talking about Macbeth, when they were talking about Hamlet, they could reproduce entire soliloquies, all the important lines that they wanted to highlight and discuss without looking at the book. That kind of lifetime mastery is something that all of us appreciate. But we know today that even in those days, those lifetime masters continued to evolve. And it was not a matter of either or. It was not a matter of lifetime mastery versus lifelong learning. And therefore, we should not look at it as an alternative um, so that we can choose only one of the two things. I think what we are talking about now is teacher as a learner, teacher as a lifetime master, of course, but also teacher as a learner, especially teacher as a researcher. So we want the teacher to continue to learn. We want the teacher to continue to research throughout her life. And that is where our model of CPD differs from the earlier model, which was considered lifetime mastery. So once you become a teacher, you stop to be a learner. And we are now saying the teacher is the best learner. The teacher is the senior scholar, and the learner is the junior scholar. So we are now in a paradigm shift, in a sense, and that is what I have in mind when I'm pleading for opening up the discipline of ELT. Next, please. Opening up can have various dimensions. Opening up in the sense of the content of ELT, opening up in the sense of the approach or the delivery of ELT, and opening up in the sense of the impact that we try to achieve. I'm going to talk about them one by one. When we think of opening up the content of ELT, I think we have to become aware of the fact that British English, American English, and global English are the three varieties which are respected in different parts of the world, in different universities, in different school systems. There was a time when people in India used to believe that there is just one original English, that is English, not even British English. Because even in Britain, people speak English in different ways in England, in Scotland, in Ireland, and therefore English is different from Scottish English, which is different from Irish English. In that sense, British English is not just one monolithic model. But even if you take one national model, it ruled over all the countries in the British Empire for a very long time. And we still continue to have people who believe that British English is the only authentic English. So authenticity of the content is established only when you are trying to teach the British variety of English. As against that, American English is getting more and more popular all over the world and even in Britain. So many features which were identified as features of the American variety of English are now present in British English, and they have become acceptable in Britain. But more importantly, Britain is only a small part of the world today. In the rest of the world, in the larger areas where ELT is a significant discipline in the university systems, today American English is becoming more and more acceptable, and American model of ELT or TESOL is gaining ground. Now, as against that, because of the growing awareness of making our learners speak English which would be understood not by British speakers of English, not by American speakers of English, but our own national speakers of English. For example, in India, what is it that you are trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve a spoken variety which is intelligible to Britishers, a spoken variety which is intelligible to Americans, or a spoken variety which is intelligible to people in India? If I try to speak with the British accent, but if people in India do not understand me, if I become less comprehensible, then is it good or bad? If I adopt American accent, but even that, if it makes me a little less comprehensible in India, is it good or bad? Now, this kind of awareness is increasingly making people move towards a global model, which is often called neutral accent. It is not only a matter of accent, it may be even a matter of vocabulary, sentence patterns, styles of presentation, and so on. But several um, teacher educators and experts, applied linguists all over the world are beginning to argue that the days of national varieties are over, and we have to think in terms of international English, in terms of global English, so that intelligibility, so that acceptability of the content, of the accent, of the vocabulary, of the style does not remain limited to any one nationality, either British nationality or American nationality or even Indian nationality. It should be something that is intelligible and acceptable at the global level. Now, apart from teaching English as a language, even when we are thinking of teaching English literature, the same may apply. So opening up the content would mean that you do not teach only British literature. Even in the old days, when we had not opened up to other literatures, the British literature program often remained a little less appealing if the students were not familiar with the European tradition of literature. So, for example, the teaching of literary criticism had to begin with Greek masters. You required to know Plato and Aristotle to be able to understand Shakespearean tragedy, for example. You required to understand Plutarch to understand stylistics. And therefore, even in terms of teaching of literature, I think we are now saying that we have to open up and we have to prescribe not only British literary text, not only European literary text, not only American literary text, but we have to include world literature. So masterpieces of world literature is something that is prescribed today in many Indian universities as well as international universities for students of literature. So opening up the content, in my view, would mean opening up the model of language as well as opening up the resource of literature. Next, please. Similarly, we have to think about opening up the pedagogy. In the old days, pedagogy centered around teaching of a text. It was a literary text. In the earliest days, of course, it was religious text. And mastering the text, even in ESL, English as a second language, mastering the text meant that you should be able to translate the text. So, grammar translation or learning of a text and its translation was prevalent for several hundred years in the history of ELT. With 20th century, we started moving towards the structural method, and we were required to teach different structures and sentence patterns. Then, of course, it became necessary to teach language as communication. And communicative approach became very popular. We are today living in the post-method era, and therefore, next please. We have moved from teacher-fronted classroom to learner-centered work, group work and pair work. That is part of opening up the pedagogy. But we have even moved out of the classroom, and we have started teaching English on radio, on television programs, through video materials, through computer-assisted language learning, and on the internet as online programs of language learning. In all, I think we are today saying that we have to have blended learning approach in our work. Next, please. Opening up the impact. In terms of impact, the earliest ELT programs were part of the Enlightenment mentality. So why is it necessary to teach English? If I asked my professors in the old days, they all started by saying that teaching of English is required because we have to enlighten our learners. Then came the days when we started talking in terms of empowerment. So enlightenment is of course necessary, but English has a greater role in terms of social change and empowering the weaker sections of society, empowering people coming from the marginal sections of society by enabling them to use English became very popular. This was, of course, going hand in hand with English for employability and English for equity and inclusive education. I think that means that the impact dimension of ELT has also opened up, and we need to keep one eye on what will be the impact of my work, not only on individual learners, but on the whole society. Next, please. I think this is the most important part of the presentation that we are moving into now. What are the implications for teachers? What are the implications for teachers' own development, continuing professional development? All of us need to move from a less confident position as a teacher of English to a more confident position as a teacher of English. One problem with the British English, with the British text, with the American text or American English variety, one problem was that invariably the teacher felt a little less confident because the teacher was not a native speaker. The teacher felt that I am just learning English as a second language, and therefore I am a little less competent as a teacher of English. And because of that impression, the teacher did not develop enough confidence. What we are saying now is that in the globalized world, even ELT becomes globalized, and every teacher of English, whether she is in India or Bangladesh, whether she is in China or Japan, every teacher of English can become a self-confident teacher of English. You can develop a neutral accent, and with that neutral accent, you are as good as any British teacher, any American teacher. The second point is opening up for self-development. Becoming self-confident can be a little problematic if you become so confident that you begin to believe that I have nothing to learn now. If you begin to believe that I am the master and now for my lifetime I don't have to learn anything. I think it is important that we remain open to self-development. And therefore, opening up to self-confidence is only the first step. But the more important second step is opening up to self-development. You begin to realize that you need to keep developing. We are moving towards a kind of education where we are preparing the learner for unpredictable futures. Our learners are going to live a life which we do not know the contours of. We do not know what sort of world they are going to live in. We do not know what sort of social, political, technological developments are going to change the world when our learners grow into full citizens. Therefore, we have to make our learners enabled to keep learning for their lifetime. It is empowering the learner by helping them to continue to learn through their lifetime. Finally, it is important to open up to global opportunities. A good teacher, even if she does not move out of her town, even if she does not move out of her university, her country, a good teacher will have to be able to become a global citizen. And with the help of technology now, she should be able to contribute at the global level, not only as a learner and researcher, but even as a teacher. Your work will become significant only when you know that you can contribute not only in your classroom, not only in the life of a small group of students, but in the lives of a large number of people at the global level. That is what I mean by opening up to global opportunities. Next, please. This is the final message. And before I say goodbye, I would like to invite questions and would like discussion with Tarun Bhai playing the role of moderator.
Yeah. Yes.
Hand over to Tarun Bhai.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Our participants are reflecting their joy in the chat box, and we are also receiving some questions from them in the Q&A. Dr. Vandana Shinde from Pune is asking, what methods can we use to build up lifetime mastery?
Vandana, thank you for asking that question. I'm sure all of us are looking for lifetime mastery, and a teacher has to build those skills in the learner so that the learner does not remain dependent on the teacher anymore. And in that sense, we are trying to gain lifetime mastery. We should be happy to do. The central message of opening up is that we have to enable the learner to continue to learn and to continue to respond in unpredictable situations. Now, these unpredictable situations would also include unpredictable linguistic and technological skills. For example, when I started learning English, by the time I completed my doctoral research, I was only required to type the text. It was not necessary for me to use computers at all. But later, in the professional development sense, it became necessary for me to use computers, to use technology, and I thank my teachers for making me confident and for giving me the skills to continue to learn so that I'm not out of date today. And I think that is what we need to do. So it is not in the sense of the skills of listening, speaking, reading, writing, but in the sense of life skills that ELT can impart lifelong mastery.
Thank you,
Hope
sir.
I have answered your question.
Yes. Now we have Dr. Vanita Chopra from New Delhi. She's asking, can teacher research or classroom-based research be an important factor leading to change or development in ELT practices?
Hello, Vanita. Yes, I believe that classroom research, classroom-based research, action research, or even doctoral research, which centers on classroom practices. All of these are significant areas of ELT, and they have contributed to new development. Till the end of 20th century, there was a kind of hierarchy, and the university research used to occupy a higher position, and classroom research, pedagogic research used to occupy a lower position. I would like to point out that we are no longer prescribing that kind of hierarchical structure of research. We are saying that even applied linguists, even university professors have to pay attention to classroom research and gain important insights from classroom research around the world. So I hope you would also be doing that, and I hope other university professors would begin to pay more attention to the voices of classroom teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rosie Yumnam has a burning question. She says, how do we overcome mother tongue interference? And is it okay to have mother tongue interference while speaking English?
Rosie, mother tongue interference is an important issue. It has remained an important issue for more than half a century now, because from the days when we started paying special attention to interlanguage, we started talking about L1 interference. However, I would like to point out that we have moved several steps away from the earliest model of L1 interference. The earliest model looked upon L1 interference as a negative impact, as a limiting factor in the learner's movement, learner's journey from early interlanguage to more developed interlanguage. What we are saying today is that multilingual competence, or at least bilingual competence, should be developed, and therefore the presence of mother tongue is not seen necessarily as a negative impact or as a limiting factor in the learning process. We are saying that the learner's ability to use a language before the learner comes to English language can be utilized as a positive factor. And I would strongly recommend you to become familiar with new developments in applied linguistics, which include bilingual and multilingual competence, and which include the concept of languaging. Um, I hope you will be able to get satisfactory answers when you look at all those new concepts.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ravi Bhushan from Haryana has a question. It says, how can ELT find its distinct place as a subject in higher education? Because ELT is generally treated as a discipline for school education to basically to impart skills and not for critical thinking.
I agree with you, Ravi, because that is a general issue in terms of perception, in terms of teacher belief, but not the belief of teachers of English, teacher belief in terms of teachers of other subjects. At the university level, quite a few teachers continue to believe that language should be learned at school level, and at the tertiary level, at undergraduate or postgraduate level, you are approaching other areas of learning. You stop learning language. It's a major problem because they do not realize that language learning continues throughout the lifetime. Even they are, when they write their research papers, even they are professors of physics, professors of chemistry, professors of psychology and geography, professors of management. They are required to use English language at a higher level, which they have not mastered. And therefore, quite a few research papers emanating from our universities are not accepted at international level for publication. So I think we need to politely draw their attention towards the fact that language learning continues throughout the lifetime, and definitely in the undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Amita Garg has another question. She says, with so many Englishes around, where would you put the Indian version of English in the global scenario?
Ambika, you are asking a question which is difficult to answer in the sense that even today, many of the senior teachers of English in India continue to swear by British English. Now, this is a fact of life. They may do it because they believe that they speak British English. In fact, nobody in Britain would accept them as speakers of British English. In fact, everywhere in the world, their English is seen as good Indian English. Now, what we need to realize is that good British English or good American English. There are bad speakers of English in Britain and there are bad speakers of English in America. Although it is their native language, it is their first language, they are not easily comprehensible at the global level. Now, that may be true in India also. We may have speakers of English in India who are not comprehensible. What we need to do, therefore, is make sure that our learners become comprehensible at the global level. And once you are comprehensible at global level, Indian English is as respected as any other variety of English. We need to understand this and we need to accept it first before other people in the world begin to accept it. So that is one of the duties of teachers of English in India, I should say.
Thank you, sir. And dear participants, as you know, like we are reaching the 10:15 deadline, and we have another session at 10:30. We would be able to take only one question now. And the further questions that we have, I would send to Jadeja sir, and we will make sure that those questions are answered in one or the other way, and it would be sent to you via the email communication. Sir,
I shall be happy to do that.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. Dr. G. Servani has a question. How to deal with students of mixed ability in language classroom?
I think uh, all our classrooms are heterogeneous classrooms. So we should not expect that all our learners are at the same level. It was a problem in the past also, but today I think the problem is easier to tackle if you take the help of technology. If you can provide differentiated inputs to your learners using technology, then to a great extent, this problem can be solved. But providing differentiated inputs is easier said than done. It requires a lot of preparation on the part of individual teachers and on the part of the institution to first create a good resource from which differentiated inputs can be provided to the learner. If we do that, I'm sure it is easier today to deal with this issue than it was in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for guiding all the participants and everyone who is the part of the ELT Summit team.
It's
Thank
a
you very
pleasure,
much
Tarun Bhai.
for like being a support for doing this adventure